Morning, everyone. Welcome to a specially called meeting this morning. I believe, John Fletcher, you called this meeting in conjunction with Mr. Royal and Mr. Freer, and we are all here, and welcome to everybody. And since you called it, I guess Mr. Fletcher, number 2 would be led by you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After having established this agenda item for this morning, we've resolved some issues, and I move that we delete this item from the agenda. Do I have a second?
Are you going to talk about
No
the
discussion.
resolution?
No.
Okay.
Have a second?
A second.
Discussion?
Just a question.
Wait a minute. Okay, first of all, I'll run the meeting,
Yes, sir.
and discussion and recognition of speakers is the mayor's job.
Yes, sir.
So I
It is.
appreciate your
It is.
enthusiasm.
It is. And I recognize that.
Okay. All right, so discussion, yes,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, I'm hearing it's been resolved, but I don't know how it's been resolved. Has the board taken action or?
I found that we have already in hand a ordinance which allows signed parking, which resolves the issue. So we don't need a new ordinance to make it no parking.
Do we have to vote on making Elizabeth Street part of that?
Nope.
why are we even having the meeting?
Well, we've got
We should've
another,
canceled the meeting.
The second one.
Okay.
Is,
Anyway, you've got a motion to.
yes, sir, I do, and it's seconded.
I,
All right, we have a motion second. All right, more discussion.
Clerk, is that correct? We don't need to vote on adding Elizabeth Street, those provisions to Elizabeth Street?
You, excuse me, you guys have already done that in the past. Elizabeth Street is allowed to do that. It's already in play.
Okay.
Any more discussion? If I don't hear any, we're gonna vote.
I guess I'd like to hear the manager's comments if he has any.
I've got a handout here of some kind.
I'm confused.
That's mine. That's,
This is
that's
yours?
on my pile, yeah. That came up mine.
Oh, we don't have a handout, okay.
No, we don't have any.
No, apparently not.
Mr. Hewitt, do you have a comment? or-
I have no comment.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering how we got here then, and that's. So I'm hearing that per the existing ordinance 17, TAC 09, Elizabeth Street is designated no parking. But I see a red lined out section says within 25 feet of any intersection with any street, exception all parking shall be designated by signs. But that's marked out, so that appears to be a change.
That's the
We're not-
proposed ordinance that you guys were gonna vote on today to make it strictly no parking. So the way that exists today is that you can designate parking by signs. So that's how it reads today. It's not strictly no parking, it's designated by sign. That was just the proposed one that we put when the meeting was called.
Okay, but I'm reading the rest of these have the distinguishing statement within 25 feet of any intersection of any street. Is this because the particular condition of Elizabeth Street? I know it's just a stub, my words,
What
but
you're looking at has been withdrawn.
what's what?
This agenda item in the backup that you're referencing is proposed, he's proposing to withdraw that. So don't,
That's not coming into play.
Okay, so ignore the red line out.
Ignore everything
Everything
associated
stays
with that
as it
agenda
is.
item.
Yes, sir.
Thank
So
you,
now,
thank you. That was what was
so I
confusing.
think the clerk is saying we can, the town can designate signs for wagon and bicycle and other uses of that street that makes the no parking, virtually no parking, without having a sign that you're designating it as no parking for cars. You're designating that space for other things rather than cars. So therefore, and it's not in that package, by the way, Ashley.
Okay, well, I'm just comparing I'm just looking at the ordinance for other, no Ranger Street, we took action on that. So
So we're designating that street for other uses, so basically, cars cannot park on Elizabeth Street.
okay, and I guess we don't, Mr. Mayor, have public comment?
No.
Okay,
Which concerned me, because the public had no opportunity for input on the proposed change. But it makes no difference because it's been withdrawn. Any more discussion?
Could you repeat that, Mr. Mayor? I couldn't hear you.
This morning, if action had been taken, there would not have been an opportunity for the public to have input to the proposed change. Because there's nothing on the agenda for that purpose.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, are we through discussing? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. We're on number 3. I guess that's you, John?
It is, sir. The Board of Commissioners directs the Planning and Zoning Board to set up a 5-member Community Advisory Committee to address parking for the town of Holden Beach. The specific brief for the committee is to assess current parking resources, assess the town of Holden Beach-owned properties that can potentially be used for parking, investigate what other beach communities in the area do for parking, investigate paid parking options, investigate if CAMA consideration places any restriction on parking rules, consider appropriate limitations on right-of-way parking, and do all of this from the perspective of public access and improving quality of life and convenience for the town of Holden Beach homeowners. The Board of Commissioners, I propose that the Board of Commissioners also change the rules slightly to allow the chair or vice chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission to make their own rules for reporting to the Board of Commissioners. I move that we accept agenda item number 3, directing Planning and Zoning to set up a 5-member Community Advisory Committee to address the parking for the town of Holden Beach. Sir?
Do you understand that, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
I don't.
I think we can only second the item as it's listed here.
There's a problem with mixing discussion in with motions. The motion, I think.
Is to
that you're-
establish.
Yeah. The motion would be to establish a 5-member Community Advisory Committee to address the parking for the town of Holden Beach. Is that,
Yes, sir.
okay. That would be the correct motion. We're looking for a second.
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 All right, we have a second. Now we discuss it. Now would be the time for you to get into your paragraph, and your other stuff there,
Okay, should I read it again?
whatever you want to do.
Go ahead.
I'll read it again just to be clear. So the agenda item calls for the establishment of the 5-member committee. The brief from the board for the committee is to assess the current parking resources, assess the town of Holden Beach-owned properties that can potentially be used for parking, investigate what other beach communities in the area do for parking, investigate paid parking options, investigate if CAMA consideration places any restrictions on parking rules, consider appropriate limitations on right-of-way parking, and do all of this from the perspective of public access and improving quality of life and convenience for town of Holden Beach owners. And the Board of Commissioners authorizes the chair or vice chair to establish their own reporting rules back to the Board of Commissioners.
Yeah, this is a fairly new citizen community advisory committee under P and Z. So, you know, I think it's a good idea to include the citizens under an existing committee that can work with the community and the town staff to take a comprehensive, and we talked about this for a long time, comprehensive view of parking. And under the rules of that committee, there was some weird rules about how they could report, so that's what I think Commissioner Fletcher is saying, that give the committee some flexibility of reporting. And there's also a rule within there, it has to be done within 3 months. We can also modify that if needed.
I'd like to point something out.
Yep.
One, I've got two comments, if I may.
Yes, sir.
As far as amending the rules of procedure for that Citizens Advisory Committee, that's not on the agenda. It's a special called meeting for the purpose of establishing the committee under those rules. I don't think you can do that, okay? That would need to be a different action, different date and time, if that's the desire of the board. And the second comment, it goes to the substance of what this committee would do. Investigate if CAMA considerations places any restrictions. That seems to be a bit myopic in scope, because there are other considerations beyond just the state CAMA rules. There's ADA requirements, so perhaps if I could, may suggest well, you could broaden the scope so that it doesn't unintentionally restrict the perspective there, to include some language that includes all applicable regulations. That may add clarity and not run into the same circumstance that we did with the Sewer Advisory Committee when we got into identifying other hazards that were beyond the scope of the initial charter. But anyway, that was the two things I wanted to point out.
No, great suggestion. The first, Madam Clerk, what is your,
Can you embed that into the brief for the committee?
I kind of have an opinion both ways, because
and it really probably doesn't matter, be honest with you. We could do it next meeting because it's reporting.
you're gonna probably have to do
So-
that. I mean, it's an item, so I don't,
Yeah.
you can maybe say that it goes with that, but well, my concern is you guys have an ordinance, and you're talking against the ordinance, so you'd probably have to adjust your ordinance. I don't know exactly what the ordinance says, because I did not read it before, but if the Community Advisory Committee ordinance in our code book says one thing,
Right.
we can't change it without somehow editing that.
And that's fair. I think that's not a problem because it's reporting that would be later on anyway.
Y'all can do that at the next
Yeah,
meeting
yeah.
if you wish to do so.
Well, just for clarification, the ordinance reads, unless otherwise directed by the BOC.
Okay, well then, yeah, but like David said, since it wasn't on it, and special agendas are a little
We'll
more
put it,
tight
we
than
put it on the
regular
July,
meetings.
we'll put it on the July agenda
Yeah,
then.
that might, I
that
would
part.
suggest that, that'd be a better
Okay.
idea.
Not a problem.
And that way we would afford the public comment as well, right?
And by the way, that 5-member committee is 2 P and Z members and 3 general public members. So if anybody is interested in serving, I would hope that this would come up in the next P and Z and go to the next P and Z meeting and volunteer.
Can we give any input on this?
Technically, no, unless the commissioners agree to allow you to talk.
I have no
I don't think so, yeah.
That will be for the next time.
Next meeting.
I have no problem. You have,
I have no concern for public.
yeah, I have no concern.
As long as we're abiding by the rules
Madam
of
Clerk?
our meetings.
All right, the floor is open. Anybody want to say anything?
Well, are we in
Madam
violation
Clerk?
of our rules?
You're skating, you're on the thin line.
All right,
It's not on the agenda,
then-
it's a special agenda, but, I mean, something like this to add, is public comment bad? Probably not, but if it was something else, we're gray area, so it's your guys' choice.
I can't do this.
Do you have Mr. Mayor, do you have an opinion?
Yes.
Do you
Absolutely,
have an opinion
absolutely.
that you'd like to voice? We can-
I've tried to. All right, what do you commissioners want to do?
We're still.
We need to vote- we need to
We're
vote
still
on the
in
agenda.
discussion right here. I may be being too specific here, but this calls for an assessment which would result in briefing the committee. Are we intending for this newly established advisory committee to present recommendations? Because I don't see anything in it that says make recommendations.
I think we are, yes. In my mind, we are.
That's what I was thinking, so we're back into a
Should we add?
rules of order question, I guess. Do we need to?
You
Well,
might,
I'll retract that. That I can see where if we vote that the committee is established, they could still be charged with the assessment, and then we could take further action to include recommendations at a later time.
at the next
So-
meeting, you guys
Something to
would just.
keep in mind, all we're voting on is directing them to make the 5-member committee. We're not necessarily voting on all the verbiage that he read.
I disagree with that. That's the backup to that.
That's part of our agenda package, but that's not part of the motion he made. That was part of his discussion.
The motion, if you guys want me to speak, I'm sorry. The motion was to establish the committee. So my suggestion might be at this point to establish the committee, and maybe Mayor Pro Tem Fletcher at the next meeting can provide a write-up as to what you want the committee to do and how
We do that.
it reports, and you guys can vote on that at the next committee. That way P and Z could get started, but we could formalize it a little better at the
Perfect.
next meeting.
Why couldn't we include this paragraph in this motion?
You can, if you want to amend your motion,
Yeah,
that
I
you
would
sure
amend
can.
the motion.
I have a motion to amend the motion. The motion maker has the option to agree.
I agree.
to the amendment. All right, so now you have a new motion on the floor.
Can I just, is it just to amend the motion as to the wording in here, not the additional wording?
Exactly.
Okay.
Does everybody understand the newly made amended motion?
Well,
I
Actually-
understand it.
you're proposing a slight amendment to the amendment.
Well, if it's appropriate in accordance with our rules of operation, can we add and recommend to the board and make recommendations based on their assessment?
I don't see why not.
John?
You're amending that paragraph, and you might want to consider what Town Manager Hewitt said
Exactly.
also about the other applicable
Yeah,
regulations.
Okay.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
Okay, Mr. Freer and Mr. Fletcher, do you agree to those changes?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All right, everybody understand the new change?
yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now you discuss the newly amended, or is there any more?
I have no discussion.
No, I'm good.
Are you ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
All in favor of the emotion, not emotion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right. That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion
I
to
move we
adjourn?
adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say
Aye.
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 Opposed, say no.